Hey guys, Prangell Gaming here, and welcome back to the 9th episode of the Talk the Ball podcast. In today's podcast, I'll be talking Queen's Park Rangers and the Gregory red card, beaten and unbeaten side, and how Harris has made this Millwall side into a highly competitive, never giving up team. But before we do that, if you haven't seen any of the other 8 podcasts, there will be a link on the podcast playlist. If you click the I button, you'll get a link to catch up with any of the videos you may have missed on that one. Alternatively, if you haven't seen last week's, then in the description will be a link to the previous. Now, before we get into this, I do also apologise for not uploading the last podcast, which should have been episode 9 of the Talk the Wall podcast. I thought I had uploaded it. Honestly, I really did expect that I had uploaded it. I've been far too busy to be able to check. I've had a lot going on as I do work every day at the moment. I'm preparing to go to university. So, yeah, it's not the most best of circumstances, and I've done a lot less videos as I'm trying to move forward. But obviously, I didn't see a point of uploading it now. I thought I'd just do this one and include some of the Millwall news from the previous. So in this week's podcast, we're going to be starting with the 2 games that we played. The first, obviously, being the one which we had against Queen's Park Rangers, which was a midweek game, and the other being the one last Saturday where we beat table toppers Leeds United. So we're going to start off with the one against QPR, and this game was going perfect as Millwall actually took the lead for a quality Conor McLaughlin goal, but then obviously Lee Gregory saw a red card for a highly controversial challenge. I sort of don't think it was that bad. Yes, yellow card probably would have sufficed. But obviously the other player went in with his studs. So really him making a meal of it was the only reason why Gregory really got sent off. I don't think it was as bad as what people are making it out to be. And something that makes me quite angry is that Henry Lansbury actually had a red card overturned for a tackle that wasn't the same. It was similar in terms of aggressiveness, where he just flicked the back of a player's heel and a player went over when he was going pretty through on goal. So that kind of annoys me that Gregory should have and really could have only been given a yellow card for that. And, well, it didn't actually stop Millwall. In fact, Jed Wallace did score a quality goal, meaning we were leading 2-0. But obviously, having 10 men did eventually lead to the fact that we just couldn't hold on to the 2-0 win, and it actually ended up going 2-2 despite our quality defensive performances. And I think we've been quality when we've been defending. We've had quite a lot of good teams come down to the den and quite a lot of good teams that we played. This league isn't full of teams that aren't actually that good, so it's been really interesting to see how we've been performed, and I wouldn't say that we've been that bad. The only game really that we weren't the best of was against Wolves, but Wolves are a brilliant side and they had the ball for the majority of the game. So the next game was one that was much better in terms of the facts. We beat Leeds 1-0. I thought again we were quality, and the stats do speak for themselves. We had 20 shots with Leeds only having 1. 6 of ours were on target, and obviously none of Leeds were. That was really worrying for a side that called themselves table toppers. Morrison had a chance that was ruled offside. I never saw it because I was actually sorting out my kiosk that I run at the den. And, well, Mill did also hit the post from 20 yards with Jed Wallace. And the keeper had to save quite a lot of important chances. Now, I honestly didn't know whether we would score. I really did expect Leeds to beat us 2-1, which is why I'm kind of happy and excited that we actually beat a side that I really didn't want to lose to. But no, Aidan O'Brien would be the Lord, the saviour, the one that would tap the ball into the back of the net to give us a all-important win. And something that I really didn't expect happening when the day actually started. Now, moving into 3 players to cover this week. The first is being a Millwall great in Chris Wood, who now plays for Burnley. That'll be followed up by Andros Townsend. And then finally, we'll be looking at Ryan Fredericks. So, Chris Wood, how did he do? Well, he played 87 minutes in Burnley's 1-1 draw away from home to Liverpool as the incredible season for Sean Dyche's men continues. Wood didn't score, but he's definitely getting the minutes he needs, and what a point to take away to Liverpool. That's not too bad. I know Liverpool aren't the best at defending, but still, 1-1 is a very good result to get against a team that are actually playing Champions League football. Now, as for Andros Townsend, he didn't really have a great week as, well, Palace lost again. I mean, they've lost 5 now, and this loss was to Mauricio Pellegrino's Southampton side, who won through a Stephen Davis goal. And Townsend, though he did feature the full 90 minutes, it probably wasn't the result he was hoping under the new management of Roy Hodgson. Finally, how did Ryan Fredericks do for Fulham? Well, he featured the full 90 minutes as Fulham did end up losing 2-1 away from home to Burton Albion. Albion did take the lead before Norwood equalised for Fulham, and then Akins won the game from the spot for Albion. Moving on into the loan watch, and well, we're going to be starting off with Jamie Philpott as his Woking side won 2-0. Philpott did get subbed off in the 64th minute as they beat Sutton United. Next up is Carlisle United. Well, that's the team that we're covering as James Brown has gone out on loan to them. And Brown actually featured the full 90 minutes in United's 1-1 draw with Barnet. Not too bad for him. I believe he made his competitive debut on Tuesday for him in the league. Keeping with the same theme of League 2. And we're looking at how Harry Smith did for Swindon Town. Well, he didn't really. He didn't feature at all in their 3-2 win over Stevenage Town. Disappointing for Smith. He really hasn't got his career going, and it's quite worrying to see that he's possibly not going to be doing that much so far. And, well, another loanee out in League 2 is Sid Nelson. He played the full 90 minutes again in Yeovil Town's 2-1 loss to Grimsby Town. And Martin Walford, being a Grimsby player, did not score for him, though. And, well, Jimmy Abdu, as we all know, didn't actually feature as he's in his final match of suspension as AFC Wimbledon beat Blackburn Rovers 1-0, courtesy of a goal from Kwesi Appiah. Into the Millwall news and one of the final sections of this podcast, and we have 6 stories, including 3 from last week. The first story comes from last week, and it's from Deadline Day. As Neil Harris mentioned, he made a late inquiry for a Fleetwood striker, Ashley Hunter. But Fleetwood's asking price was far too high for a player that Millwall did try to sign before. And the player himself, in terms of stats, scored 11 goals and got 7 assists for his side last year. So he would not have been a bad striker whatsoever. The next story is to stay with the same theme of transfers and transfer deadline day. And that was the fact that Neil Harris was offered a player who was on wages of 10k a week, but that price actually dropped down to 4k by 10 p.m. later that day. And that's obviously saying how crazy deadline day is. And, well, it's one of the main reasons why Millwall did actually sign so many of their players early on. Harris did confirm that. And Harris also said on deadline day, your phone is going off every 15 minutes. If you look at what happened with Chris Wilder when a news report actually followed him around for the whole day, it's as crazy as that. This is actually what happens. David Martin is the final player from last week's news, and he said he's actually been waiting a long time for the right option to come along, and Millwall were the perfect suit for him. And he said he hopes he succeeds at the Lions. He also went on to say at Dons he knew he was leaving early as he'd fallen down the pecking order. Now, as for this week and the stories that we have to cover, well, Morrison was where the first story came from, as he said he was hoping that the match would be a sellout as it sees him take on his former club. And it basically was a sellout, with the Lions having their biggest league attendance since 2012. Now, as I mentioned earlier against QPR, Lee Gregory did get a red card, and we did appeal it. Unfortunately, it was declined, meaning that Gregory will miss an additional 2 games after missing the game against Leeds. Following his red card there, obviously, he did miss the Leeds tie. He will also miss the game against Preston North End and Reading, and this comes at a really bad time as we have Tom Elliott currently still out injured. It doesn't really mean too much bad because Aidan O'Brien and Fred could step up to the plate. They were both quality against Leeds. But obviously, in terms of goal-scoring players and players that are getting goals, you would prefer to have Elliott or Gregory in and around the team. Finally, the last story comes from Neil Harris himself, who said he was impressed with Millwall's work rates, which saw them beat Leeds and also draw with Queen's Park Rangers. He said after the Leeds game, we ran them out the match and the work rates of his players have been quality throughout the entire season so far. And the final section of the podcast is Where Are Wool? And after drawing with QPR and winning against Leeds, we currently sit 16th in the league table with a +2 goal difference, which isn't too bad if you ask me. And we have 9 points, which is 5 off being in the drop zone. We are doing fantastically. So that is all we got time for this week. Do feel free to send your emails to brandonprangell@gmail.com with the subject header Talk to Wool, and I'll look through them and obviously add them to the podcast if they are useful and can help us add some discussing points. Now, Taylor wasn't here, unfortunately. He had to be somewhere. He will eventually return to the podcast at the second. I just don't know when. But obviously, leave your comments in the comment section or email me at that email handle and I'll have a look at them, add them in until next week. And obviously, if I do make any more videos on my channel at the time before the podcast, then I'll be seeing you guys in then. But until next week, like, comment, subscribe. Of course, I will be seeing you guys sometime next week, whether that be a video or another podcast. Goodbye.